I think when I started librarianship 30 years ago, they didn't have the beautiful puppets available to you that you can purchase now. Then it was a matter of crafting your own or making do with minimal sort of rudimentary puppets that you would fashion at home after work. And it was a lot of fun because it sort of made you very much aware of the kinds of stories you were going to invest your time in learning. Now there are so many beautiful puppets that you don't really have to even blink an eye. You don't have to be a seamstress. You don't have to go out and make your own. But a lot of the puppets that I've got with me today I did make because I had to. And then as the years have gone by, I've purchased more and more of these gorgeous, beautiful puppets that are readily available in so many places. And most public libraries that I know invest in these kinds of resources for their children's librarians to have on hand. So you don't even have to sort of think that you have to acquire your own parade of puppets. You can certainly go into public libraries that you'll be working in and expect them to have those kinds of resources for you as well. They invest heavily in them too. So I think I'm going to start out and do this a little bit developmentally, which is what the Course 529 does, because each sort of stage builds on a previous stage. And so even for my youngest patrons, and we do a lot of baby times, and in my library system we did Parent, Child, Mother, Goose, which doesn't allow you to do puppets, use puppets, but we do a lot of baby times as well. And I would even start drawing out the puppets for the babies, and certainly for the toddlers. And there's a number of reasons for that. Babies can understand a huge amount of what you're talking about, even though they can't utter a word. But one of the things that really helps a baby or a toddler build meaning is realia, or a photograph, or in this case, a puppet. So if anybody can see my Baba black sheep, oh, I haven't unpacked one of my boxes. The puppet serves as something that can give meaning to what you're doing. And so instead of just assuming that they know what a sheep is, urban children, do they know what a sheep is? Have they seen sheep? Have they been to a petting farm? We don't know. But when you pull out something that looks like this, and you're doing cluck cluck red hen, or you pull out a puppet that looks like this, in fact, this guy's so scary. I have 3 cats at home, and sometimes this guy's left lying around on the couch, and people will quite often assume that he's one of the real cats as well. He's frighteningly realistic. But when you pull out a cat like this and you're talking to toddlers or you're talking to babies, you can see their little eyes light up and you can see them zone in on what you're using. And the more realistic you make it appear to them, the more they buy in, although they have absolutely no problem suspending their disbelief at all. So even something as simple as, "Pussycat, pussycat, where have you been?" "I've been to London to visit the Queen." "Oh, pussycat, pussycat, what did you there?" "I frightened a little mouse under her chair." So something like that can even sort of add something to a classic nursery rhyme, maybe something that they have, sort of no context for, but all of a sudden, perhaps it seems just a little bit more real to them because you've used something that looks very real in their presence. So I have tons of examples of that. Just to give you another one, this is my favorite guy. Some of you may or may not like singing. Like it or not, we do it a lot in story time. And we use it a lot in programming because, as you guys who took Library 529 already know, music is an all-brain activity. So not only is it providing vocabulary, but the way music is sung, it helps break up or segment the words and slow down your speech so that babies have a better time or an easier time understanding it. Plus, there's a phenomenon known as parentese, which is sing-songy. You'll hear parents click into it. Grandparents are particularly good at it. Even older siblings will go into a slightly higher sing-songy kind of a pitch when they're talking to a baby. People use it with their pets as well. You notice that? Anyways, that kind of sing-songy, universal language, parentese, motherese, infant-directed speech, however you want to call it, actually helps children listen and attend to what you're saying. And singing is very much like it, just escalated a little bit more formally. So you all know Ba Ba Black Sheep. Ba Ba Black Sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. 1 for my master, and 1 for my babe, and 1 for the little boy who lives down the lane. Ba Ba Black Sheep, have you any wool? Yes, sir, 3 bags full. So once again, the other thing that we know about language acquisitions is that babies want to have conversations. And so many little nursery rhymes are perfect little conversations. When you think about, I had a little turtle who lived in a box, or you think about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I caught a fish alive. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, I let him go again. Why did you let him go? Because he bit my finger so. Which finger did he bite? The little one on the right. So a nursery rhyme, when it doesn't have 2 voices, the children have to figure out who's talking. But as you can see with Ba Ba Black Sheep, if you use a puppet for the other character, you immediately have a context for a conversation, and it's immediately apparent that there's 2 voices. Does that make sense? So, these gorgeous little creatures that you can buy just about anywhere. In fact, I just looked at the UBC bookstore. They've got a whole bunch of them right over there. Can take sort of the very normal, the culture of childhood, the nursery rhymes and songs that you're going to be using repeatedly at story time, and just make them a little bit more fun for you and for the kids. So things like 5 green and speckled frogs, a totally common counting song that everybody knows and loves, suddenly becomes a bit of participation when you do. 5 green and speckled frogs sat on a speckled log, eating some most delicious bugs. Yum, yum! 1 jumped into the pool, where it was nice and cool. Then there were, how many?
4.
4 green speckled frogs. Glub, glub. And then you can continue on. So this just sort of makes it a little bit more dramatic, a little bit more meaningful, and then they have a great time throwing the frogs back at you afterwards. Because the more context there is for whatever it is you're doing, the more meaningful it is to them, the more that they can relate to this, the more they're going to learn from the experience, and hopefully the more they're going to enjoy it as well. So you can even start with the cultural things that you know already so well. Nursery rhymes are part of everybody's culture, or even culturally specific nursery rhymes, and especially if you're working with immigration populations that bring their own cultural rhymes to you or that you can research. It's just a really easy way of making a very short story a little bit more dynamic and dramatic. So it focuses their attention. It actually takes the attention and the pressure off of you and puts it on the puppet. If you watch, the kids will be focusing on them, not on you. So I know when I started off in puppetry, I was always hiding behind a puppet stage. So there's your full invisibility cloak on. You're behind the stage. They don't see you. They see the puppets interacting. It's a different kinds of performance thing. But the time that it takes to put up and take down a puppet stage, the time to rehearse if you're doing it with another person, and not only that, what's going on in the audience outside the puppet stage if you're behind a puppet stage and can't see the children at all is a big question if you haven't got 2 or 3 people cooperatively putting on a puppet show. So although I started out doing the invisibility cloak of the puppet show behind the puppet stage, I very quickly just moved out in front of it because it was so much easier to do, and frankly the staffing resources were not there that we could have 2 or 3 people working on a production, except for maybe Christmas or a certain festivity program or a big outreach program that we might be doing to schools or something like that, it was very unlikely that I would be able to work with a colleague and put something together. So most of the time you are working on your own. But by having a puppet on your hand on the outside of the puppet stage, you do have another voice. There is a second character on the stage with you, not just you. And I always find that it sort of brings out a different aspect of you as well. So simple and familiar things, songs that you already know, nursery rhymes that you already know, they can simply be bumped up a little bit by using a puppet. Another reason I think I've started using puppets a lot was to sort of break down a barrier of an unfamiliar situation or a new face. When we go into a kindergarten or when we go into a preschool or a daycare, many of these young children have been told never to speak to strangers. You don't talk to strangers. It was one of the saddest days in my life when I was in a library pulling books off a shelf one day and just turned around and talked to the little girl that was standing right next to me, selecting books. And when I started to talk to her, the look of absolute panic on her face, you know, and she looked around madly for her mother because here was a stranger talking to her and she didn't know who she was. And I found that the puppets in story time or when you go into a preschool or a kindergarten where nobody knows you helps break down that barrier a little bit. They're not talking to you, they're talking to the puppet, and they're not threatening at all. So it's a great way to build a little tiny bit of rapport with the children instantaneously too. Did you want to? Oh, okay. All right. So I mentioned the fact that sometimes it gives you the opportunity to have another voice. When parents are reading to children, it's something that they do quite naturally. There was a British UK study in which they talked to children and they asked what the children wanted. And the greatest thing that the children wanted was they wanted their parents to read to them more often and they wanted them to use funny voices. And it's something that most parents sort of dive into with great glee. Dads, in fact, make better story readers sometimes than the mums. They're a lot less inhibited, and sometimes you could really hear the voices come out when you've got an animated storyteller of a dad going on in the library and telling a story or reading a story. But we naturally read in a monotone. And if you listen to a lot of people just reading aloud to a child, pay attention. How fast are they reading? Are they reading really quickly? And if so, is the child able to actually hear each word? It's one of the criticisms lobbed at the media, especially television and DVDs. The dialogue is too fast and too spontaneous and too sporadic for a child to actually hear and attend and get the message of what's actually being said. So the puppet dialogue, if you have it, as it were, if you're having a conversation with a puppet, and if you are altering your voice at all, it tends to slow down your speech, makes you pay attention to who is speaking, and you can give the children visual cues as to who's talking as well. So I'll give you a couple of examples of that. I think everybody knows the story of if you give a mouse a cookie, and all of the subsequent, if you give a moose a muffin, if you give there must be what, 5, 10 spin-offs from that series as well. But the first one and the best one was, if you give a mouse a cookie, he's going to ask for a glass of milk, please. A glass of milk. Yes, please. So if you give the mouse a glass of milk, he's going to ask for a straw, a straw, a straw. And if you give the mouse a straw, and he drinks up all the milk, he's going to ask for a napkin to wipe his face. A napkin, please. All right. Why don't you just use your paws like other mice? Sorry. And if you give him a napkin and he wipes his face, he's going to ask, a mirror, please. A mirror, a mirror. I have to make sure I don't have a milk mustache. All right. And if you give the mouse a mirror and he looks at his face, I think I need a trim. A trim? A trim. Do you have any nail clippers? Nail clippers. Nail clippers. Okay. And if you give the mouse some nail clippers and he trims his whiskers, on the floor, he's going to ask for a broom and a dustpan. So he's going to sweep up all of his whiskers with the broom and the dustpan. And he's going to get so energetic, he'll probably sweep the living room and the dining room and the kitchen too. And then he's going to be so tired that he's going to ask for a little nap. Could you make me a bed, please? So if you make him a bed and pluff up a pillow and pull over a blanket for your little mouse, he's going to ask for a story. A story. So when you read him a story, I want to see the pictures. He's going to want to see the pictures. And when he sees the pictures, I want to draw a picture. He's going to want to have some crayons and some paints and paper. And he's going to want to draw his own picture and tape. Tape and a pen. I have to sign my name. After he signs his name and you tape the picture to the refrigerator, he's going to stand back and admire it. And staring at the refrigerator is going to remind him, I'm a little thirsty. And he's going to ask for a glass of milk, please. And if you give a mouse a glass of milk, he's going to ask for a cookie. And you know what happens if you give a mouse a cookie. So that's just another way that you could present a book that you maybe have read a million times to the children. It also makes a perfect flannel board because it's cumulative. You're adding one piece of, the napkin, then the nail clippers, and then the mirror, and then the dustpan. It makes a perfect flannel board. And once you've done that several times, you've got the story under your belt. You know it very, very well. So it's quite easy to take it right off the page, take it right away, and present it as a dialogue between the two characters in the story. So when I'm looking for books that I think might be amenable to sort of a puppet presentation, I often look for that two-character dialogue because it's an immediate signal to me that there's another voice in this story, and I can probably do a better job of breaking those characters apart in the reading and making it more obvious to the children by using a puppet for one of the characters. Sometimes I use two puppets for each of the characters. And I'll show you what that looks like. Where are they? Sometimes you can find puppets in the least obvious places. But one day when I was buying some tea towels and things like that for my mother, I found a brown oven mitt and a green oven mitt. Now, most people wouldn't go eureka at that moment, but I did. What I found really strange was as I came home and I showed my daughter, I said, look, I've got a green oven mitt and a brown oven mitt, and she went, frog and toad! My daughter's a parole officer. This is not a response that you expect from a parole officer. She just knows me too well. So with oven mitts and some googly eyes and a couple of styrofoam balls, you're in business. You don't have to go with these beautifully constructed, perfect puppets. You can have a lot of fun with puppets that you make really simply. And in fact, I think it inspires parents to play more with their children. I think it inspires them to go home and try to do exactly the same thing. It doesn't look threatening. It just looks like a whole lot of fun. So for example, one of my favorite stories in the anthologies, and there are 4 of them, and 4 times 5 mean 20 instant stories for you to tell with a frog and toad puppet. Well, I have 3 that I tell all the time, and one is The Kite, which is a fabulous story, and it gets the kids moving and jumping and waving. So it's a really great story for action. Not as great for puppets, but I do it with that puppet because he's got legs and arms and he's really good at actions. And the other one that I love to tell is The Garden, which involves a great deal of vocal communication. In other words, it's more like story theater. You get the kids shouting, "Okay, seeds, start growing!" But the one that I really like to do with the puppets is called Cookies. One day, Toad made a batch of cookies. These cookies smell delicious. He ate a cookie. Well, they taste delicious too. I think I will take some to my friend Frog. So Toad put the cookies in a bowl and he took them over to his friend Frog. Frog, I have made some delicious cookies. Ow, said Frog. And Frog and Toad each ate a cookie. Said Frog. These cookies are delicious. Have another, said Toad. So Frog and Toad each ate another. Said Toad. These cookies are delicious, even if I say so myself. Can we have another? Indeed. So Frog and Toad each ate another cookie. And another cookie. And another cookie. If we keep eating cookies, we're going to get sick. Do you think we could have one very last cookie? Indeed, said Frog. So Frog and Toad each ate one very last cookie. Do you think we could have one very, very last cookie? Indeed, so Frog and Toad each ate one very, very last cookie. What we need is willpower. Willpower. What is willpower? Willpower is trying very hard not to do something that you want to do. Like eat cookies. Yeah. Where do you get this willpower? Well, if we put all the cookies in a box and close the lid, then we will have willpower. But Frog, all we have to do is open the box and then we could have one very, very, very last cookie. No, said Frog. We'll put them in the box, close the lid, and tie string around them. Then we will have willpower. But Frog, all we have to do is cut the string, open the box, take out the cookies, and then we can have one very, very, very last cookie. No, said Frog. We'll put them in the box, tie string, and put it on a very high shelf. Then we will have willpower. Then we will not eat any more cookies. But Frog, all we have to do is get a ladder, get the box down, cut the string, open the box, and then we can have one very, very, very last cookie. No! Said Frog. Frog did something very strange. He took the cookies outside, crumbled them on the sidewalk, and said, "Here, birds! Here, birds! Come and get your cookies, birds!" Birds flew in from everywhere, and they picked and they picked and they ate every single crumb. There, said Frog. Now we have willpower. Now we will not eat any more cookies, said Frog. But Frog, there are no more cookies. You can keep your willpower. I'm going to go home and bake a cake. And he did. So that's Frog and Toad. So just with a couple of oven mitts, you can sort of have fun, have two characters, and it still leaves another option for you to be the narrator in the story. Right? Does that make sense? So you can even get more than one voice. You can have two voices. The puppet that I've probably used more than any other in the universe, because he's just so portable and so easy. And again, one of those things that once a parent sees this, it's pretty easy for them to go home and make this for their own toddler. So everybody knows the story of the very hungry caterpillar. You have to do it every year. You have to do it several times every year. You might get bored of doing it, but once you put a puppet on your hand, it sort of makes the possibilities a little bit more exciting for you. All you need is a sock or a glove, 2 ping pong balls, some googly eyes, a piece of elastic. You punch holes through the bottom, 2. Elastic in, out, knot it, pull it back into the googly eyes, glue on something, and you've got, oops, a very hungry caterpillar. In the light of the moon, a little egg lay on a leaf. And one warm Sunday morning, up out of the egg came a tiny and a very hungry caterpillar. He started to look for some food. On Monday, he ate through one nice red apple. But he was still hungry. So on Tuesday, he ate through, do you want to count them? 1, 2 green pears. On Wednesday, he ate through, 1, 2, 3 purple plums. On Thursday, he ate through
1, 2, 3, 4
ripe red strawberries. On Friday, he ate through
1, 2, 3, 4.
Ooh, I've got an extra one. Oranges. But he was still hungry. So on Saturday, he ate 1 sausage, 1 cupcake, 1 piece of cherry pie, 1 lollipop, stick and all. What else did he eat? He ate a piece of chocolate cake. What else should he eat? A pickle. Anything else? A slice of Swiss cheese. Anything else? A piece of watermelon. Is he full?
Yes.
That night he had a tummy ache but he wasn't a little caterpillar anymore. In fact, he was a big, fat caterpillar. So he spun a cocoon around himself, and he stayed inside for more than 2 weeks. But when he came out, he wasn't a caterpillar anymore, was he? Do you know what he was? What? He was a beautiful butterfly. All right. So there's a really easy way of taking a felt board that you probably all have and using the felt board for a totally different purpose, but making the story sort of come alive for the children. Plus, once you've done it 100 times, it's kind of fun to at least adapt your methodologies or the way you do it. Or you might use it a certain way with one audience and a different way with another. It depends entirely on the group that's in front of you, how old they are, whether they're restless or not. You can get them participating more likely with a puppet than you sometimes can just by trying to get them involved with the story. It sometimes inspires them to participate even more when there's a puppet on hand. I often have him going through the audience, eating things out of their hair and under their armpits and sort of out of their jacket pockets and things like that. So it becomes sort of participative in that way as well. And that's something you can do with a puppet that you would never do by yourself, right? Okay. Any thoughts that any of you want to, or questions that you want to ask at this point before I continue on? Judy, am I covering what you'd like me to cover? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think if there was one thing that I could do, if there was only one puppet that I had to eke out my entire career with, it would be a character puppet, either a little girl or a little boy. And this sort of brings a different aspect to one of the reasons why I've started to use puppetry a whole lot more in my programming. Storytime involves a fair amount of ritual. You want to greet the children, you want them to make them feel comfortable as quickly as possible. You've only got half an hour with them, maybe 40 minutes with them. There can be a huge turnover in your story time. Some children you may never see again, some may only come once a month. You know, you've got to make a sort of a connection with the children as quickly as possible. And you are an adult. Now you're a lot closer in the age to them than I am. And I think as I've grown up, as I've grown older, then using the puppets has helped break down that barrier of age with them. And it has also break down the barrier of familiarity, so that when they get to the story time, again, they don't think that they're dealing with a strange, unusual older person. They immediately gravitate towards the puppets. So my puppets have often been the hosts to the story times. So they'll sing the welcome song, they'll introduce the themes, they'll do head and shoulders, knees and toes, they'll do some of the action songs that sort of bring in the continuity lines throughout the program, and then they're the ones that say goodbye. They're the ones that sing the goodbye song. They're the ones that get all the hugs and the kisses at the end of story time. But it's all really fab. So I made Pierre a long, long, long time ago. He's looking his age these days, thanks. And he became my host for all my toddler story times. And he would sing the welcome song. Now, yeah, you can sing it now. La, la, la. Hello there, everybody. It's nice to see you here. It's great to have a visit and maybe even hear a story and a poem. Sing a song or maybe two. And then sign out some really good books to take back home with you. So Pierre was the host, and he was the guy that sort of started things off, and the children knew that when he was singing his song, then story time was about to begin, and they would come and they would gather around. And I've told this story to everybody I know, but my favorite moment in hosting a story time was once again a two-year-old story time. And we used to have a branch that didn't have a children's librarian, so on the day that they had toddler story time, I would gather up my books, I would gather up my stuff, I would throw everything in the car, I would drive out there like mad, do story time, come back, you know, gather everything up, come back to my home branch. And one day I arrived and was madly unpacking all the stories and felt boards and everything else like that. And a little guy came around and watched me do that, and he said, where's Pierre? And in my mind, I went, and I guess I looked a little shocked, dismayed, panicky. And he said, "Is he sick?" I said, "Yes. Pierre has a cold, and he's not here today." And he went around to all the other children saying, "Pierre's not here. We're going to have to sing the welcome song. Pierre's not here today. Pierre's sick." And that was it. The children all joined in. They all sang the welcoming song. I went, phew. But it was a real turning point, I think, for me to realize how incredibly strong that belief is in little guys. I know my own granddaughter, who's 2.5, her favorite is the cat. She'll drag him up and she'll hand him to me and she'll say, "Turn on, turn on." Now there's a media era child. Turn on. Because he's not real until he's animated to her. But the second he's animated, I get no attention at all. All the questions are directed at the cat. All the commentary had better come through the cat. And in fact, it's a whole lot easier to get her out of the house, get her dressed, get her eating, getting anything done if the cat tells her to do it. You'll notice I sort of put in the little messages, take out some really good books at the end of the song. They can do that kind of PR work for you as well. Get your message across.
That's your own song.
Yeah, I just made it up, but you can make up your own song
You're
too.
You're going to send me the words.
You want the words?
Share. Yes.
Okay, I will send you the words. So those hosting kinds of opportunities that a puppet can fulfill for you, they sort of become your sidekick. But I use Pierre for any number of stories, and it doesn't even have to be a little boy character. I do use him for Pierre by Maurice Sendak. There once was a boy named Pierre who only would say, "I don't care." So that's his name story. That's why I made him. But I also use him for Arthur. Arthur was a very good son. But sometimes Arthur was lazy. And sometimes Arthur was late. And sometimes Arthur forgot. For example, one day his mother said, "Arthur, are you ready to go to school?" "I'm ready," said Arthur, and out the door he went. But 2 minutes later, the door opened up again, and in walked Arthur. "Arthur," said his mother, "you're back." "I know, I forgot my pencil crayons." "Oh, well, you'd better have your pencil crayons for school," said his mother. So up he went 2 steps at a time, down he came with his pencil crayons. "Goodbye." "Goodbye," said his mother, and out the door he went. But 2 minutes later, the door opened up again, and in walked Arthur. "Arthur," said his mother, "did you forget something else?" "I forgot my lunch." "Well, you'd better have your lunch." So up he went 2 steps at a time, down he came with his lunch. "Goodbye," said Arthur. "Goodbye," said his mother, and out the door he went. 3 minutes later, the door opened up and again, and in walked
Arthur.
"Arthur," said his mother, "did you forget something else?" "Yes." "What did you forget this time?" "I forgot my homework." "Well, you'd better take your homework." So up he went 2 steps at a time, down he came with his homework. "Goodbye." "Just a minute," said his mother. "Do you have everything you need for school today?" "Yes, I do." "You have your lunch?" "Yes." "You have your homework?" "Yes." "Your pencil crayons?" "Yes." "How about a jacket?" "I have a jacket." "Your knapsack?" "I have a knapsack." "Sneakers?" I have my sneakers. I'm not wearing them. "Are you sure you have everything that you need for school today?" "I'm sure. I have everything I need for school." "Are you absolutely positive you have everything you need for school?" "I am absolutely positive I have everything I need for school." "Are you absolutely, positively, 100% sure you have everything you need for school?" "I am absolutely, Positively. 100% sure. Good, said his mother. Goodbye. Goodbye, said Arthur, and out the door he went. Phew, said his mother. But 2 minutes later, the door opened up again, and in walked Arthur! Did you forget something else? Yes. What did you forget this time? I forgot to kiss you goodbye. Goodbye! See what I mean about Arthur? Okay, in the original story by Bernard Weber, I was trying to think of who wrote it, Arthur is an anteater. Well, I don't have an anteater puppet, but Arthur can stand in. He's just a little boy. And so my little stand-in puppet, but the one character, if I could have nothing else, can play the role of any character, be they human or not, in many of the stories that you're going to encounter. And because I'm female, and because I want to appeal to the little boys in the audience as much as possible too, then I would choose a male character just to sort of be a foil for myself as well. I also have a really awful high-pitched voice, and so I find myself sometimes it helps if I choose characters that have nice, gruff, lower voices than mine. So that brings a question of voice into the discussion of puppetry. I came out from, I stopped doing a story at one point during a story time. And it was over, and a little guy came up to me and he said, you should really take ventriloquism classes. And I said, sorry, I'm not going to take ventriloquism classes. And I don't think that you need to. Children suspend that disbelief for the moment that they're within the story. And in fact, I think it helps their imaginations blossom if they're making that leap for you. If you make it too easy for them, or if the puppets are so perfect, it sort of doesn't seem fair to their imaginations to let them invest something in the process as well. And that's why sometimes puppets can be outrageously simple things. This is a hunk of fake fur, but it's one of my favorite puppets. I use it for Hubert the caterpillar, who thought he was a mustache. I'm not a caterpillar, I'm a mustache. And I use it for the caterpillar and the pollywog. Once there was a caterpillar who was very proud of being different. She would go around the pond and tell everybody that she met, when I grow up, I'm going to turn into something else. So once again, it just gives you an opportunity to direct the conversation to something else, in this case, a piece of fake fur. But it makes the imaginative leap for children, I think, is slightly bit easier than if you're simply reading the story aloud. Does that make sense? And I have all kinds of ones like that. I have inchworms. And some of my favorites are bath mitts. And these I found at a quilting store. And one of the things I mentioned, we do a lot of singing. You might not like singing, but this again gives you an opportunity to sing songs. And again, it's not your fault if your voice is off tune, it's their fault. You can blame it on the puppet. Or you can use them to cue the children into their part of the song. For example, oh, I went down into the barnyard just to see the animals there, and there were cows out in the barnyard, and they were mooing everywhere, and they went moo, and they just mooed around all day, and they went moo, and that is all they had to say. So I went down into the barnyard just to see the animals there, and there were dogs out in the barnyard, and they were barking everywhere, and they went quiet hall, and they just barked around all day, and they went and that is all they had to say. So by simply rotating through my bath mitt puppets, you get all the characters that you could possibly want in your barnyard. And again, this is something that's extraordinarily approachable for parents. You know, the next time hopefully they see a bath mitt that is a character, they'll get it, and they can recreate that experience so easily at home. And of course, that's what we're after. If we just do it at story time, we've had no effect. If they take it home and they sing the songs, or they retell the stories, or they use the puppets, then we've really made a difference in that child's life. So it doesn't have to be exotic, it doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be really outrageously costly to do this at all. All right? Judy asked me to make sure I talked about some of those opportunities where we're speaking to large groups of children. And this is also a reality of a lot of the programming that we do. Even normal story times can get very big. And we used to have a regular steady attendance of 60 to 70 kids, especially at our toddler story times. So that's already fairly large. But often we used to participate regularly at the Children's Festival. We would have a storytelling tent, and there you might have 200 or 300 children. Or you might be asked to come and speak at a parent evening or a school special where they're celebrating literacy, and you might want to do storytelling for 80 or 90 or 100 children. And then I mentioned those opportunities when we might be promoting Summer Reading Club, and we might even be speaking to an entire school in a morning. And if we don't have the time to break it out into sort of 90 or 100 children at a time, we might be seeing 300 of them at a time. And that's when I haul out the biggest puppets. And they're not useful for small story time programming, although I will occasionally bring them out. They really sort of are for the big stage, and they usually involve some degree of movement and a little bit more action than you would, because you sometimes have to occupy an entire stage, and if you're standing there all by yourself and all on your own, it's really hard to sort of fill that space. So for that purpose alone, and one of my staff members once quipped that pretty soon the puppets were going to be bigger than I was, because they just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Where's Amos?
You're right behind him.
Ah! So we were asked to do stories at a children's literature festival. And again, the audiences there were going to be 300, 400 children at a time. And I thought, oh my heavens, what are we going to do? So we went through the rosters of the authors that were presenting at the conference, because we wanted to connect to the conference as a whole. We wanted to present stories from the authors and the illustrators that were going to be there, that the children might be meeting. Now, the most intimidating thing I think I've ever done in my life was have to tell Amos's sweater when Janet Lunn was sitting in the audience, watching me critically. So, but that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to connect to the other authors and illustrators that were presenting. And so, if you know the story, how many of you know the story of Amos's Sweater by Janet Lunn? It's a Canadian classic. Kim LaFave is the illustrator of the picture book. And there's another reason why I would sometimes opt for a puppet presentation as opposed to simply reading the book. It is a perfect storybook. There isn't a line out of place in that picture book. And the only problem with presenting it to a large group of children is the soft palette, the pastel colors that Kim LaFave uses to illustrate the story. Plus, it's a small format. It's no bigger than probably 9 inches square. The story, I should have it with me just to show you. And if I were to use that with a group any larger than 20 or 30, all you would hear probably from the children is, I can't see, I can't see. So at the point where they can't appreciate the illustration or the delicacy of the illustration or the intricacy of the illustration, it might be a moment to draw them to the book, give them a connection to the story, and then let them recreate that experience when they go to the book back with their parents on their own, individually, so that they can truly appreciate the artistry of the book as well as the language. So for that reason, I created Amos. And I won't be able to probably tell you the whole story. How are we doing for time?
You have 35 more minutes.
Okay. Is that before 4 o'clock or before?
35 more minutes will be 10 to 5.
Oh, I better speed it up. All right. So just to give you a taste of what those large stage kind of performances might look like, I'll just introduce this one and introduce another one so that you can see what they might look like. Amos was old. Yeah. And Amos was cold. Yeah. And Amos was tired of giving away his wool. Yeah. 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 So when Aunt Hattie came out to the meadow one day with her clipping shears, Amos balked and he butted Aunt Hattie and he ran away. At which point I would be running across the stage. Stop, Amos, stop, said Aunt Hattie, but Amos didn't stop. Amos ran around and around and around the meadow. Aunt Hattie ran around and around and around the meadow. Amos ran uphill and down, and Aunt Hattie ran uphill and down. And finally, Uncle Henry had to come and catch Amos and hold him down so that Aunt Hattie could shear his wool. No! No! Cried Amos. No! No! Said Amos. Oh, Amos, said Aunt Hattie, it doesn't hurt. Now just lay still. And she very carefully clipped and sheared until she had all of Amos's wool. Amos was cold. Yeah. And Amos was old. Yeah. And Amos was tired of giving away all of his wool. Yeah. Yeah. And now Amos was mad as well. Mad. Mad, said Amos. Bad. Bad, said Amos. I'll end the story there. You'll just have to go look it up and figure out how it ends. But can you see how that might be effective if you are on a situation where you have to be on a stage or you have to try to appeal for a much larger audience? Sort of, again, to draw their attention and to keep their attention and to hold their attention. The power of the puppets being able to hold their attention, I think, is most powerfully evidenced in stories like Rudyard Kipling's How the Camel Got His Hump. In the beginning of years, O best beloved, before the animals began to work for man, there lived a camel in the middle of the howling desert. And besides, he was a bit of a howler himself. And he ate sticks and thorns and milkweed and prickles, and was most excruciatingly idle. And whenever anybody spoke to him, all he would say is, hurrah. Just hurrah. And no more. Well, one Monday morning, along came the horse with a saddle on his back and a bridle in his mouth, and he said, Camel, oh camel, come out and trot like the rest of us, camel. But the camel just looked at the horse and said, "Hurrah!" And the horse went away and told the man. Anyways, the story goes on and on and on. It's filled with lovely language, and it's a fabulous story. But I could not possibly tell that story to a group of kindergartens and keep their attention. But I can with the puppet, because that silly business of spitting all over me keeps them coming back to the story and giggling and refocusing their attention again. When my daughter was 6, she had a penguin costume for Halloween. Shortly thereafter, Tacky the Penguin was published, and I thought, aha, here's my chance to turn her Halloween costume into Tacky. Once, on the frozen continent of Antarctica, there lived a family of penguins. Their names were Goodly, Lovely, Angel, Neatly, and Perfect. But one of the penguins was Tacky. Tacky the penguin was an odd bird. All of the other penguins would greet each other nicely and quietly in the morning. Good morning. How are you? How are all the little pretty penguins? But not Tacky. He'd slap them on the back and say, "Hey, how's it going, huh?" Goodly, Lovely, Angel, Neatly, and Perfect liked marching in nice, neat, straight lines. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not Tacky. Tacky liked to dance. 1, 2, 3, 6, 9.5. 4. Goodly, Lovely, Angel, Neatly, and Perfect liked to sing nice, sweet songs. Songs like "Sunrise on the Iceberg." Not Tacky. Tacky liked country western. How many toes does a fish have, and how many wings on a cow? I wonder, yep, I wonder how many there are. Tacky was an odd bird. Anyways, the story goes on from there. So you can see how having a few of those larger characters around can also help in sort of larger-than-life situations that you will find yourself in as a children's librarian. And it's just one of those useful tools that you can add or not if you wish. Every children's librarian that I know of has their own distinct style. They have their own skills. Some of them like felt boards and do felt boards beautifully. Some like music and use songs a lot in programming. Others like oral storytelling without the aid of any prop or any assistance. I just happened to have started using puppets an awful lot during my career and never grew out of it. As Sandra Boynton once said, I guess I got to be a professional kindergartner.